So in this handout on the imperfect, active, and middle passive indicative tenses, this parallels Mounce's chapter 21. All right, so let's walk through this real quickly. Basics here on the imperfect, active, indicative. So we're going to look at the active mood or the active voice first, and then look at the middle passive. The imperfect is used for past time and portrays continuous aspect according to Mounce. Now, I will just go ahead and tip my hand to you. When Mounce describes the present stem as dealing with continuous aspect, that's sometimes true. It is not always true. The present tense stem can be used to portray action that is in progress and therefore continue, going on in terms of a continuous way. But it could also be used for action that is iterative or repeated. So you may perform an action where you start and you stop, but you do it, say, every weekend. Well, is that really continuous? Not exactly, but it's done with frequency, isn't it? And the present stem's used for that kind of action as well. So I just think there are some limitations. Mounce created a book, and it was revolutionary in terms of Koine Greek, and it's captured the market for the most part, and he wanted to say some things that he thought were accurate and some things that he thought were new and unique in terms of his approach. But I do think that sometimes he oversimplifies things. So I hope that's okay with you if I disagree with Mounce from time to time. I had a student who was getting ready to go to England to do graduate work, and one year he took Greek with me, and he would hear me make corrections to what I thought were inaccuracies in Mounce's textbook. And he raised his hand and he said, "Dr. Marshall, this is really hard on me. It's like Mounce is my papa and you're my mama, and hearing you two disagree in class is like watching mom and dad fight. This is really, really difficult." And I basically just said, "Grow up and you'll be okay." No, I was much more gentle about it. But, as you are getting educated, you're going to be able to interact with the people who write the books that you read. And you need to read critically. You need to think about what they're saying and always ask yourself, is that really the case? You can't imagine or think that somebody, because he has a PhD behind his name, and because he has a book in print or she has a book in print, are therefore unable to be challenged. Okay? So always read things critically. This may unsettle you, but you will find that the BDAG lexicon, for example, makes some errors. Okay? What? The standard Greek lexicon? Absolutely. Absolutely. So, but he does refer to this as continuous aspect. The stem that is used for the imperfect is the present active stem. There is no such thing as an imperfect stem, as you might remember from reading through the chapter. For the imperfect active indicative, the subject is the agent of the verbal action. The agent is the doer. So he was eating, they were killing, and so forth. So the subject performs the action. That's active voice. Now, what are the components of the form? We met the augment here in this chapter. The imperfect is a past time tense. So it's a secondary tense, and it's going to use an augment for it. And that will come at the beginning of the verb form. Technically, it comes at the beginning of the stem, okay? It comes at the beginning of the stem. We have some verbs that have little prepositions prefixed to them, and they're called compound verbs, and your augment will go after the prefix, but before the stem itself, all right? So we'll have opportunity to see that, a lot of that as we go on. But it's technically right before the stem. You put the augment. If the verb begins with a consonant, then your augment is going to be a prefixed epsilon, okay? And remember, since a vowel here is starting the word, if it's not a compound verb, that vowel epsilon is going to need to have a breathing mark, right? And the breathing mark is a smooth breathing mark. So let me not see any augments that are unmarked with the breathing mark. Make sure you put those in there. If the verb begins with a vowel, then you're going to lengthen the initial vowel. So that's the augment. The stem that we're going to use, as mentioned already, is the present active stem. The tense formative is none. There are no tense formatives in the imperfect because the present stem doesn't use tense formatives. The connecting vowel or the thematic vowel, what term are you used to using for this vowel, omicron or epsilon? The connecting vowel. Okay, so I tend to use that expression as well. Sometimes thematic vowel or theme vowel will slip out. So, but omicron or epsilon are two possibilities. Remind me, when do I use an omicron for my connecting vowel? Okay, good. If I have mu or nu following the connecting vowel, it's an omicron. Everywhere else, it's an epsilon. So tell me, why is it that in the form luo, where this omega represents an omicron that's been lengthened, why was the omicron used? That's right, because the original ending was me. Okay, so that's why you've got an omicron connecting vowel that lengthened, and there wasn't an epsilon there. Okay, because generally speaking, your rule is use omicron before mu or nu, and it's epsilon everywhere else. Well, if it's epsilon everywhere else, how would you explain the first person form except for the fact that you've got to go back to the original me? You see? All right. And then my personal endings are the secondary active personal endings. On my master chart, here's my my active and secondary endings over here on the right side. Notice that in parentheses, I've given you the real endings here, which are m, or mu, sigma, tau. Now, you don't see all those in the actual forms that result, but the real endings are mu, sigma, tau. Compare that with the real endings in the primary active tenses. Aren't they almost the same? The same MST, mu, sigma, tau, except you had the iotas. Here, the iotas are all missing. The same mens and tes. And here, it's nu tau. Over here, it was nu tau iota. I'm just dropping the same iota I've dropped over here to get my secondary active endings. Now, it does, as a matter of fact, turn out to be the case that the first singular and the third plural forms end up looking the same, but for very different reasons. Does anybody know why the original mu has switched to a nu here in the first person singular form? All right. Does anybody know why the nu tau has switched to a nu here? That's right. Final taus drop off at the end of a word, right? If you have a tau at the end of the word, it likewise falls into Sheol or Hades, and so your nu is left. But why did the first person form do this? Well, this is an interesting little thing about Greek. What are the letters that real Greek words can end with? If you think about strings of Greek text, I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but Greek words can only end with certain letters. You might know what they are? You're just going down my list here. Yeah, right. You see sigmas.
Omega.
Okay. Let me give you a word, okay? Since this is a Christian school, we can use words like this. Okay? The word sinner. Sinner consonants, which would be, what are the consonants here? Sigma, nu, and rho. Those are the only consonants that will actually end a Greek word. So you can walk through the Greek New Testament, and anytime you have a Greek word, if it ends with a consonant, it should only end with one of those three. Or a vowel. Greek words can end with lots of vowels, okay, but only three consonants. And you may pull up a word like, I don't know, Abraham, and go, I got you, Dr. Marshall. There's a mu at the end of Abraham. And I would just tell you that Abraham is not a Greek word. It has been borrowed into the language, okay? So what I'm telling you doesn't apply to borrowings. I'm talking about legitimate, real Greek words. They're not supposed to end with any consonant besides the center consonant. Okay? And then any vowels they can end with too. All right, so what's my problem here? I am trying, when I use a secondary active first-person singular ending, I'm trying to stick a mu at the end of a word. Greek doesn't allow that, does it? So what's Greek going to do? Greek's going to say, well, I could either completely get rid of it, or I could just do the next best thing. What kind of a consonant is mu? Well, it's nasal, okay? It's not dental, but it is nasal, isn't it? Everybody say, mm. Oh, in order to pronounce a normal consonant, normally your mouth has to drop the jaw open and to some degree to let air out of the oral cavity, right? Ba, la, ka, right? But with M, you're keeping your mouth entirely closed. And what's happening is that the airflow is then being pushed up because the back of the mouth, the soft palate drops, and the nasal cavity allows the air to flow through the nose. Okay? Now try to do an M sound and then plug your nose. Right? You notice the air stopped, right? And then your ears exploded. So that's because mu is a nasal. So mu can't stand at the end of the word, but nu can. Mu is a nasal, and so what's happened is Greek has chosen a nasal consonant like the mu, but one that can stand at the end of a word. And of my three, the nu here is the only nasal, right? Now, I don't think there was a committee of Greek people that decided to do this. It's just what their mouths did in light of the restrictions on how they could pronounce their language. Okay? But anyhow, if the mu switches to a nu, it ends up being identical to the nu tau where the tau drops off, and it has a final nu also. So they're the same ending in form, but for very different reasons, right? All right, but that's why it happened the way it did.
Why is that a rule? Like Elohim doesn't sound weird.
It doesn't sound weird to you?
Elohim? No.
Of course not.
You also speak English, so.
Exactly.
Maybe that's why. But
Yeah. Now, I mean, honestly, if I were a native Greek speaker, I really do wonder if it would have sounded funny to me to hear that back then or not. I don't know. But as a matter of fact, as you study Greek, you won't see other consonants ending words for whatever reason.
why they did that.
Yeah. A lot of times when people ask the why questions, sometimes you can come up with good reasons why. But other times the answer is the Greek mamas told us to talk this way. Greek mamas told their Greek children these are the words.
Like that's almost as weird as our Q rule.
Mm-hmm.
It's a U.
Yeah. We don't have Q's otherwise in English, do we? Right. Okay, good. Now back to our handout, we mentioned that we're adding the secondary active personal endings. So with our form, here you see all of the working parts. The augment is the eh. For luo, the present stem is lu. The connecting vowel here is epsilon, and that's because the personal ending that I've chosen is the sigma for the second person singular. So elus. How would one translate elus? Yeah, so you were loosing. Very good. All right. So on this next part of the handout, you get a chance to see the real endings, and you compare that to the modified endings, and then the resultant endings with the theme or the connecting vowel and its modified personal ending. So as we've mentioned before, omicron is the connecting vowel used whenever we have mu or nu, and there they are, right? First singular, first plural, and third plural. Everywhere else, epsilon. Modified endings, remember the mu switches to nu here. Sigma can stay. Final tau, it's got to drop out, right? That's why we end up with no ending and only a connecting vowel on the back side of it. Men and te are perfectly fine following these connecting vowels. Nu tau has a final tau, so it drops and becomes nu. So what we end up with when all is said and done is this set of forms. Let me have you repeat after me, and we'll say them here in the chart. Eluan, Elues, Elue. And notice that there is a new in parentheses. What's that new called that's in parentheses here?
The movable.
Okay, it is a movable one. It's a movable new. So if I saw this form in Greek, all right, would you translate it any differently than if you saw Elue? No. That movable new makes not an iota of difference. Okay?
If it wasn't
It's the
movable,
same.
then it would be an omicron.
Okay, yeah, and that was going to be my next question. How can we be certain that that new is not a personal ending new? Because the connecting vowel is epsilon. And if this new were truly the new of the first singular or the third plural, the connecting vowel has to be an omicron, right? If you see an epsilon followed by a new, then that new is disposable. Okay? It's a movable one.
And what determines whether or not it's there?
Typically, you're going to see it when the next word begins with a vowel, and so you want to break up the vowel sequence. So it's like, saying apple, right? What do you want to do when you say apple? You want to stick a movable N. I was going to say movable new. You stick that N there. Okay? All right. Good. Now, sometimes you are going to see the movable new even if there's not a vowel. Like it happens so frequently that it seems like many Greek speakers just used it as a matter of course. All right. So in your handout, you've got the footnote here about the center consonants, and so you can review that. Okay, now on to the imperfect middle passive indicative. The imperfect is used for past time and portrays continuous aspect, according to Mounce. The stem that is used for the imperfects, the present active stem still. There is no imperfect stem. For the imperfect passive indicative, the subject is the patient of the verbal action. The expression patient means acted upon, right? If you're going into the surgery room and you're the patient, that means the doctor's doing something to you. So this word is used, it's been co-opted by linguists to describe a subject that has the action performed upon the subject. Okay, and that happens in passive action. So he was being eaten. Poor guy. They were being killed. For now, any imperfect middle forms that you learn will be deponent, using Mounce's terminology of deponency. Remember how Mounce describes a deponent verb? Yeah, so a verb that has middle passive endings but is active in its sense. There are many grammarians who do not like to use the word deponent. It seems like that term is being killed off these days. So I use it as a matter of convention, sort of in quotes, but most people, it seems like most scholars now, or most young scholars, are saying, look, let's jettison the word deponency. This is something that's been borrowed from Latin. Greek is not Latin. There just are some verbs in Greek that don't have an active form. Okay? And we don't yet understand the nature of the middle voice. At least many of us don't understand it well enough to be able to describe what's going on yet. Anyhow, here is a form, eparuamen, which would be parsed imperfect deponent if you're using Mounce's parsing system. Others would just say imperfect middle or imperfect middle passive indicative for singular of peruamai, I was going. Now, what are the components of the form? Pretty much the same components we've already seen. The augment, which will be epsilon or lengthened initial vowel. The stem will be the stem of the present active. So what do you see? In the present tense and in the imperfect tense, there's no distinction in stem, right? You're using the same one, whether it's present, imperfect, active, or middle passive. Tense formatives are nil. Connecting vowels are the same, omicron, epsilon. Personal endings are secondary, but they're no longer the active ones on the top of the chart, but the secondary ones on the bottom right side. These are the secondary, middle, passive personal endings. Let's just take a quick peek at those. Here's our master personal endings chart, and I have the secondary, middle, passives right here. Look at my endings. I have main, sa, ta, metha, stay, and ta. There you go. Look, I have MST and NT again, don't I? I have omicrons in most of the forms. This is the little bit of the odd man out there. It would have been wonderful, wouldn't it have been, if it had just been ma. But that's not what we got. The Greek mas told us to pronounce it main. Okay, so same connecting vowels. So again, if I have moos or news, you got to put the omicron there, right? Otherwise, I'm going to get an epsilon. The only problem child here is the second singular. I get lu, sa. What's the problem here? The sigma is intervocalic, it drops out, and I get epsilon and omicron contracting, and it becomes u, right? So those are the result. Okay, let's read the forms. Eluamen. I'm sorry, I should have made it an eta. Eluamen. Eluu. Eluata. Eluametha. Elueste. Eluanta. All right, so the metha and stay are identical on primary and secondary middle passive. So that's beautiful, isn't it? So do you see the patterned chaos here? There's similarity in all four of these charts, aren't there? Okay, let's real quickly take a look at that hint. So here we have elua main, our augment, personal ending, or excuse me, present stem, lu, connecting vowel, omicron, and then first singular is main here. So if this is passive, how are we going to translate this? Elua main. Yeah, I was being loose. I noticed that my accent is actually in the wrong place here. It's elua main. There. Okay. So maybe you can make that correction. All right. And so we've looked at how all of these forms become what they do. Let us just recite these together. Repeat after me. Elua main. Eluu. Eluata. Eluametha. Elueste. And eluanta. All right, so let's work on memorizing these things as part of that master chart. All right, good.